What caused Chinese to migrate to New Zealand, and how have they impacted New Zealand? People left China because of famine, overpopulation, drought, shortage of land, banditry, and peasant revolts. The incentive to come to New Zealand was gold, specifically the Otago Gold Rush. This attracted the first Chinese migrant workers from overseas. They were said to be hardworking and inoffensive. Most preferred to return to their homeland eventually. The Otago Gold Rush had drawn in Chinese workers, and the first 12 landed from Victoria Goldfields in Australia in 1866. They were invited by the Dunedin Chamber of Commerce, who needed workers to fill in the leaving Europeans. By 1896, over 2,000 Chinese immigrants had come to work at what they would call the New Gold Mountain. Usually only men migrated. In 1881, there were 4,995 men and only 9 women. 1881 also had the highest number of Chinese in New Zealand prior to World War II. Most Chinese gold miners were poverty-stricken, and few got rich. The Chinese also had other jobs in the gold rush, like farming, market gardening, laundering, and railway and road building. Some ran their own small businesses, mostly in market gardening and laundering. These were also the jobs that were taken after all the gold was mined. Few Chinese were respected by the Europeans. One Chinese immigrant who was respected was Choi Siu Hoi. He helped pioneer the New Zealand gold dredge, and most future designs in New Zealand were based off of his 1888 prototype. Chinese were discriminated against, and there was an anti-Chinese prejudice in 1871. There were calls for restricted Chinese immigration. Like most British colonies at the time, New Zealand had an entry tax on immigrants. The Chinese Immigrants Act by John Hall's government brought upon a new tax, which was called a poll tax. This tax was directed at Chinese immigrants and included absurd repercussions. Ships were only allowed to take 1 Chinese immigrant per 10 tons of cargo. Chinese immigrants also had to pay £10 to get into the country. In 1896, Richard Seddon's government raised the tax to 1 person every 200 tons of cargo and £100 for the passenger to get in. The poll tax was only in effect until 1944. In 2002, the government officially apologized for the suffering caused by the poll tax to the Chinese. The Chinese gold mining contribution during the Otago Gold Rush has been neglected until recent times. The restoration of a Chinese gold mining town called Arrowtown, excavated in the early 1980s, has been an insight to show people the lives of Chinese gold miners.